Well, thank you very much, and lovely to see you all here tonight. It's lovely to be back in Perth. I was here, I think it was October last year, and it's been wonderful to come back in what is the longest election campaign in living memory, but I think we're all counting. It's 17 sleeps to go. Anyway, one of the things that I've been doing quite a bit of throughout this election campaign is speaking to people across the country in forums like this about not just the contribution that refugees are making to our community, but how much more we could be gaining if we were to get rid of what is a very cruel and inhumane regime currently overseen by the government and sadly effectively endorsed by the opposition in the Shorten Labor Party. I've spent a long time thinking about how we approach this issue in the middle of an election campaign, because often people talk a lot about how politics is what's wrong in this issue, that it is the playing politics with people's lives, the politics of stop the boats, that three-word slogan that was so toxic in the 2013 campaign, and of course the constant rut that the policy debate over refugees has been in, and I would argue since as early as 2001. The truth is we need political change in order to change the current policy, and so this is the right moment to put forward alternative policy and to talk about what a better way would look like. But it's also up to the community and the people of Australia to demand a better way. And we've heard tonight the amazing stories of people who have chosen Australia to be the place where they won't make home because they've had to flee for whatever reason, their homelands. And that here, once they get here, once they're able to integrate into the community and be supported, we see people blossom into great Australians. And I just like to say, I think Frank Lowy is a great Australian, as much as the governor in South Australia was a Vietnamese boat person, and he just on Monday got one of the highest awards in this country on the Queen's birthday. And this is a man who came, he proudly says, came to Australia with nothing but a suitcase of dreams, and he's now the governor of my home state. And these are the stories of what makes our community rich and what makes our the history of our generous heart so real. And it's one of the things that really is so devastating about where the debate and the public discussion around asylum seekers and refugees impacts the most, is that our generous heart has been under attack for far too long. One of the things that I've been incredibly honoured to be able to do during my time as a senator in the federal parliament is that I can go and visit people in refugee detention centres. And not many people get the opportunity to do that. I get to go beyond the visitor centre and beyond the gates, and I get to go inside and talk to the people who work there, as well as the people who have been locked up. And I've been to every detention centre in Australia, and I've spent time on Christmas Island and Nauru and Manus Island. And unlike the people who work in these places, I'm not gagged. The people who work in these places, no matter what their role is, whether they're a contractor, whether they're a security guard, whether they're a teacher, a nurse, a immigration department bureaucrat or official, they are under very strict gag orders. If they speak about anything they see, anything they hear, anything that goes on within that system, that they are threatened with 2 years jail. You've got to wonder why that is. The media aren't allowed in. Journalists are effectively banned from even the entire island of Nauru at the moment, let alone inside the camp. And the people who work inside are threatened with jail and prosecution if they speak out. You know, in these detention centres, it is a crime to report to anyone beyond the immigration department the sexual abuse of a child or the violence and abuse of a woman, regardless of who the perpetrator is. I mean, it is just astounding that we run these places to a point where it is illegal to report a crime. There is something very, very wrong with that. So I've been incredibly lucky to be one of the few people who can go in and see what's going on. And I take with that a huge responsibility that is not just bearing witness to what is happening in Australia's name, but to be able to come back to Australia and tell people stories. Because it's really important that Australians, and as voters you all know, what is happening inside these camps, what is happening in the name of Australia, and that is being overseen every day by the Australian government and the immigration department. And not to mention it costs billions of dollars to run these places as concerned taxpayers. But it is more about the treatment of individuals that I'm concerned with. One of the individuals I met when I was in Nauru, in fact, Ravi was in Nauru when I was in Nauru. He reminded me tonight. It's wonderful to see you here in Australia. Welcome, Ravi, I think. Welcome. One of the other people I met when I was in Nauru, and let me just give you a very quick picture of how the Nauru camp is set up. It is in the middle of an old phosphate mine, so it's in the very middle of the island. The island itself is so small, it takes 20 minutes to drive around. Very, 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 very small. And you drive into the middle of the island, you follow this dirt track. There's a rusty old sign that says rubbish dump and an arrow, and that's because the tip is up there as well. It says a lot about where we're keeping these people. And you follow the dirt road and the gravel road, and you get to the middle of this mining camp. There's still some mining going on. There's still big mining trucks driving in and out, but it's not. It isn't the height of activity that it once was. It is just white gravel all over the ground and big white tents, marquee type tents, and very, very tall fences and double fences. So one big fence and then a couple of metres back another big fence. And there's security guards dressed in very, very robust security outfits, stationed all over, outside and inside. Many of them wear everyone's got a little kind of radio thing in their ear and a walkie-talkie thing on, and many of them carry GoPro cameras on them as well, so that everything is captured. You walk in and they swipe you with the wand that you would get when you go through security, particularly at an American airport. That's the kind of height of what happens. When I went in for the 3 days that I spent there, every time I went in and out, they went through the security guards opened up all my pens to make sure I didn't have a recording device in my pens. You walk inside and people, the moment you get in, you realise the sheer desperation of the individuals kept there. And I must say the hardest part is visiting the family camps, where you see the young children and you see the parents. And the woman that I met when I first walked in to the family camp, her name is Zara, and she's not much taller than me. She's a young Iranian woman, She is actually an environmental engineer. And she came straight up to me, spoke brilliant English. I later found out she speaks 5 languages. So, you know, this idea from Peter Dutton that these people don't speak English and that might be a problem is, well, cross that one off your list, Minister. She came straight up to me and she said, you know, I need to talk to you about the conditions in this camp. I need to talk to you about the people who are here and suffering. She took me around the camp very quickly, introduced me to the sick elderly women who were in the camp, the single young women who were feeling threatened, and she made sure I got to see all of the children. At that stage there was about 250 kids in that camp, and they'd been there for months and months and months, almost a year. And she took me to the shower block in the camp, and it had all been cleaned up. It tends to happen whenever I visit detention centres. They all get cleaned up pretty quickly, the day or two before I get there. It seems to be a regular occurrence. Some of the staff joke that I should come regularly because it might keep things a bit more in order. We got to the shower block and Zara pulled out a crunched up notice that had been stuck on the shower blocks. They'd been pulled off for my visit, but it said showers 2 minutes only. And she said, this is a problem because what is happening is the women who have young children cannot clean both themselves and their children in 2 minutes. And some people are abusing that. Guards were forcing women to show their bodies in order to have access to longer showers. Some guards were forcing young women to exchange sexual favours in order to have enough time to use the showers. Because if you don't get out within 2 minutes, the water would turn off, or the guard would literally just open the screen and pull you out. And there were more stories like this. And I came back to Australia and I started talking to the minister at the time about this, and he didn't really take much notice, didn't want to believe it, until very, very brave whistleblowers started to speak out as well. And we now know, as a result of a number of Senate inquiries and other independent reviews, one commissioned by the Department of Immigration themselves, that this is indeed what has been going on inside the Nauru camp. And we know that there has been dozens of cases of women and children sexually assaulted and abused inside that camp by the very people who are employed to look after them. And to this day, 0 people have been convicted of any crime. Zara is a pretty brave woman for coming forward and making sure that I knew about this so that I could raise this. But she's actually a very brave woman for the whole reasons that she left Iran in the first place. As an environmental engineer, she was required to document the environmental impacts of a particular project at the time, under the guise of the university that she was working at. And when she wrote the report and said that this project was devastating for that environment and marked up a whole lot of issues with it, she was told very clearly the government wanted this to happen and that she would need to change her report. And she said no. She said, you know, this is academic integrity. I'll be sticking by what I've written. She was threatened again and told, you change it or we're going to come after your family. And it was at that moment where this smart young woman decided to stand for her principles and not change the report, but also not put her family in harm's way, and smuggled her way out of Iran. And she obviously couldn't go to the airport and just hand over her passport, because the government would have known that she left. They never would have allowed her to leave the country. She had to be smuggled out in order to flee safely. And she got herself to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and she went to visit the United Nations. She knew there was an office there. And she arrived and she said, "I'd like to apply for refugee protection. I'd like to have you assess my case." And they said, "Oh, sure, there's about an 18-month wait for an interview." Now, she knows she can't go back to Iran. She definitely can't go back to Iran now because she smuggled her way out. So she's stuck in Kuala Lumpur. The United Nations won't even be able to look at her case for at least 18 months. She can't work legally while she's there. She has no rights in the country. Malaysia doesn't recognise refugees. She basically had to hide on the streets of Kuala Lumpur. And she did that for as long as she could until she felt that this was no good. If she'd actually been finally interviewed and been found to be by the United Nations as a refugee, the waiting list is about 86 years long for resettlement. And that's a lifetime. Why would you stay there? She got herself to Indonesia and found a very similar circumstance in Indonesia. Currently, at the moment, Australia, since 2014, has stopped taking UNHCR, UN-assessed refugees from Malaysia and Indonesia. Since 2014, the Australian government closed the door on allowing UN-assessed refugees to come from those countries. And she got herself on a boat and found her way, sadly, to Nauru. Her story is clearly not unique. There are 2,000 people scattered between the Nauru camp and the Manus Island camp, and all of their stories are horrific. There's a journalist inside the Nauru camp, a father, who said to me when I was speaking to him, "My wife was killed because of my work as a journalist in Iran, and I wrote about what the government was doing during the middle of the Iranian election campaign. My wife has been disappeared, we assume she's been killed, and I fled with my 2 children, an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. And he said, every day they ask me, "Dad, what did we do wrong? Tell us what we've done wrong. Tell us how long are we going to be here?" And they'd already been in detention for about a year. And he looked at me and said, in the middle of this stinking hot, gravel-ridden camp, we were sitting outside, you don't sit inside the tents, it's 40, 50 degrees inside the camp, so you're sitting outside. And he said, I've run out of stories. I've run out of excuses for my children. Will you tell them why they're here? And it's a pretty hard thing to explain to a parent who's already lost his wife, who did everything he could to give his kids some freedom. It's pretty hard to explain to him, let alone an 8-year-old, that the reason that they are stuck in this hellhole is because the Australian government wants to use them as an example. I was pretty honest with him and tried to explain that, but it's a very, very hard thing to look somebody in the eye when they're stuck in one of these camps and say that. And the truth is, it is abhorrent and it is morally bankrupt that is the reason why these people are locked in these situations. Make no mistake that Nauru and Manus Island are designed to break people. It is a deterrence policy. They're run in a way to break people's spirits. The government says, if you don't like it, give up and go home. The sad thing is that for the 2,000 people that are there, including that father and his 2 children who are still there, I saw them in 2013 and they're still there today. If they haven't gone home now, that's because they can't. Anyone who thought this was an easy trip, anyone who thought that they could ride this out, that there was a safer and better option, they've given up already. The problem is that the people that we are destroying in these camps are people who genuinely need our help, and we have done anything but that. And that is why we need to find a better option. That is why we need to find a better way. Zara tried to come the proper way, and the truth is there is no pathway for her. Both the Labor Party and the Liberal Party have consistently said for years now that we have to have this cruel policy and these hellholes in order to send a message to people not to come here, because otherwise the only other option is everyone jumps on a boat and however they get here is up to them. That it's only option A or B, when it is just not true. Under the Fraser government, when boats started to come, Malcolm Fraser said, let's put some money into helping people get assessed so they don't need to come on a boat. Let's put money at where they already are and help assess their claims. And then those that are found to be refugees, will fly them here. They don't have to come on a boat. They don't need a people smuggler to get from Indonesia to Australia. And that is precisely what we should be doing now. We want to close those hellholes. The Australian Greens want to shut those camps, assess people's claims who are there and resettle them. They've been through enough already. We've got to close those camps and bring them here. But we can't just do that. We have to, when closing down those camps, we have to build the safe way for people to get to Australia. Reinvest the money that is being spent on those camps into assessing people's claims in Indonesia and Malaysia and further along the track, and increase the number of people that we will take directly. And if Coles and Woolies wanted to put a independent supermarket out of business, they don't bash up the customers for going over to their shop. They don't say, no, you're not allowed to milk at all. They sell a cheaper product. They make it more convenient. They offer a better service. We've heard over and over again that we have to smash the people smugglers' business model by locking up children in hellholes, where it is so awful that even the Australian Medical Association says that this is child abuse. Clearly, Australia is a smarter nation than this. That is not the only option. There is a better way. We want to beat the people smugglers, undercut them. Provide a safer option. Assess people's claims, give them a sense of hope, give them decency. Once you've assessed people's claims fairly and efficiently, you welcome them to our country and you help them to integrate into our communities, because they're going to make great Australians, as we've seen from Friday here. Zara would make a great Australian. Any university would be happy to have her. I'm sure here in WA there'd be plenty of companies who are looking for a savvy environmental engineer. I met a young guy in Melbourne recently, Jan, who had been in detention for 3 years. The moment he got out of detention, he's a young Afghan guy, Hazara, got out of detention, and within a number of days he already had a job, working as a tiler. 12 months later, he set up his own business and he now employs 34 other people. He's about to be given the contract, he's been just awarded the contract to do the tiling at the new Adelaide Stadium. And these are people who have risked everything for the chance of freedom and a better life. They are courageous, they are brave, and they are so entrepreneurial. And these are the people who have over many, many decades, over history in this country, helped us build a great nation. And they are the next generation of people who are going to help us do that as well. It just means we have to be a bit more welcoming, a bit more honest about what people can bring to this country. Enough of this, we can't have people here because they might take our jobs or they don't speak English, or if they don't speak English and they don't take our jobs, they're going to be clogging up our dole queues. That's what Peter Dutton said on week 2 of this election campaign, our immigration minister. And when he said that, that was why we couldn't, the Greens policy of letting more people be welcome to Australia was because they'd take jobs, clog up the dole queue, and they couldn't speak English. And the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, said he was an outstanding minister. Outstandingly bad. You know, he can line up with the world's best minister, Greg Hunt. And they've got a great front bench, don't they, that crew. It's a move and a shift on in the Australian community. They've seen the horrors of what's going on in these camps. They want to see a better way. Our challenge in the next 3 weeks, next 2.5 weeks, the next 17 sleeps, is to show that there is a better way, that it is sensible, that it is doable, and that if we want to restore our nation's generous heart, we have to get on and do it. Thank you very much.